Welcome to Falcon TV. Subscribe to the channel to stay informed and inspire us.
North Korea has one of the world's largest standing armies with over 1.2 million active personnel and several million reserves. The army consumes a massive portion of the country's GDP. Most of the army consists of poorly equipped infantry formations, but it possesses substantial mechanized units with tanks and armored vehicles for combined arms operations. North Korea operates around 4,000 main battle tanks, including older T-55s and Type 59s, but also more modern T-72s acquired from Russia and indigenous Chonma-ho tanks. Its army inventory includes over 21,000 armored vehicles like personnel carriers, recon vehicles and air defense systems providing mobile firepower. North Korea has deployed thousands of artillery systems including long-range Koksan and M1978 guns and BM-21 Grad rocket launchers dug into hardened sites near the DMZ. Special forces units like the 11th Storm Corps provide asymmetric warfare capabilities like covert ingress and sabotage within South Korea to disrupt defenses. The army maintains large stockpiles of chemical and biological weapons, providing options for unconventional warfare despite ethical concerns. To counter American air power, North Korea deploys over 17,000 air defense guns and SAM systems like the S-200 and KN-06, providing dense anti-aircraft coverage. Lacking advanced communications, the Army uses extensive buried fiber optic cables and landlines for command and control resilient to disruption. North Korea fields around 500 Maryland 500 and Mi-2 light attack helicopters armed with guns and rockets to support ground forces. Fighting morale remains questionable despite pervasive political indoctrination and a fanatical cult surrounding the Kim dynasty. Malnutrition and inadequate training hampers units with weak education and living standards, undermining capabilities. The Army suffers from aging equipment, shortage of advanced systems and technology, lagging decades behind South Korean and U.S. forces. To compensate for disadvantages, North Korea has adopted an offensive posture and embraced asymmetric strategies like stealth infiltration and subterfuge. The army operates thousands of teen and child soldiers, with questionable training, morale and reliability. North Korea maintains the largest special forces in the world with over 200,000 troops trained for sabotage, subversion and reconnaissance operations. Paramilitary agencies like the Worker Peasant Red Guard augment army formations for homeland defense, security and support roles. Forward deployment along the DMZ provides the army options for surprise attack into the south but also leaves forces vulnerable to retaliation. Nuclear weapons development provides escalation options but risks invite overwhelming retaliation from the US and allies. Cyber warfare units give North Korea opportunities to disrupt enemy networks and infrastructure as a force multiplier. Extensive underground facilities allow the concealment and hardening of troops and equipment near the DMZ. Economic collapse and famine in the 1990s severely degraded army capabilities, with impacts still lingering today. Access to foreign components and technologies remains extremely limited due to sanctions, degrading modernization efforts. Years of high defense spending has come at the expense of basic infrastructure, economy and living standards. The Army lacks advanced reconnaissance drones, relying on outdated airframes like the 1950s Antonov An-2 for surveillance. Most enlisted personnel serve for 10 years, with weak incentives and poor living conditions for recruits. Corruption and political patronage interferes with the Army's efficiency and operational capabilities. The military lacks modern computerized equipment, relying instead on paper maps and low-tech communications. The Army's operations doctrine focuses on overwhelming firepower and decisive offensive maneuvers into South Korea. Equipment maintenance and readiness remains inconsistent, with shortages of spare parts hobbling combat systems. The Army operates extensive underground bunkers and tunnels to store weapons and protect leadership in wartime. Lack of fuel hinders training and would constrain maneuver warfare operations during a major conflict. North Korea maintains a massive chemical weapons stockpile including agents like VX and sarin to inflict mass casualties. The Army requires heavy logistical support from China and Russia to operate advanced equipment lacking indigenous mastery. Leadership culture encourages sycophancy and corruption over professionalism, hampering effectiveness. Priority on political loyalty over competence has weakened the experience and skills of the officer corps. The Army utilizes deception and concealment to compensate for weaknesses in air defense and counter battery fires. Most Army conscripts are malnourished, with minimum education, undermining their health and cognitive abilities. Operating equipment is a mosaic of systems like T-55s, Type 59s, Type 63s indicating haphazard modernization. The Army lacks realistic training against peer opponents, relying instead on scripted drills and propaganda exercises. Logistics networks are dependent on vulnerable roads, railroads, lack heavy equipment transporters relying on manual labor. Much of the Army's equipment dates from the 1950s-1980s with limited digital electronics or sensors. North Korea holds massive synchronized artillery drills to showcase power but likely lacks munitions for sustained barrages. Over 70% of the ground forces are deployed offensively near the DMZ, exposing them to air, missile strikes. The forward deployed Army has limited mobility, flexibility or ability to withstand protracted, bloody warfare. Years of sanctions mean most Army equipment lacks GPS, night vision and advanced sight standard for modern forces. The Army lacks its own military satellites, relying on limited space assets for ISR and navigation support. Propaganda touts fanatical fighting spirit, but actual morale, loyalty and discipline remains questionable under combat. The Army trains and equips for rapid offensive action but likely lacks capabilities for defensive operations if attacked. Overall, the Army presents sizable but dated conventional forces vulnerable to more technologically advanced adversaries in the long run.
If you liked this video, please subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up. Thank you.